codependency, let's think about it as self-love deficiency. This is an interview with Rosenberg. I'm so glad you're here. He is a psychotherapist, international speaker, author, professional trainer on codependency, and narcissism, trauma, and sex addiction expert. He owns Self-Love Recovery Institute, and you can find out about his books and seminars at selfloverecovery.com. So the reason I asked you here today was because I was so excited to read your new definition of codependency as self-love deficiency. I've used it a million times since I read about it on your website, and I love how respectful it is. And I think that that's a really important thing in our business, to give more respect to some of the labels and terms that we use. Could you define codependency so my audience is on the same page as you?
Let me first explain how I completely gutted the term codependency, redefined it in my first Human Magnet Syndrome book, and then how I then took the new definition and changed the name to self-love deficit disorder, or SLDD, and the person is self-love deficient, or the SLD. So codependency, the problem with that is it meant too many things to too many people. The word itself makes no sense. It comes from, in the 70s, it actually traces back to meaning the partner of an alcoholic, and then it became the partner of an addict. Co-alcoholism, in the 80s, they developed the term chemical dependency, and then it became co-chemically dependent, and the partner of the addict, and then it became codependent. So the word is misused. It has nothing to do with people being dependent on others. And being a partner of an alcoholic does not make you automatically codependent. So what I did was, in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, I had to simplify the definition. Codependency is an individual emotional or psychological disorder that manifests in relationships. It is when you give all or most of the love, respect, and caring to others. You expect it to be reciprocated or mutual. It's not. You try to make it mutual. You can't, and you stay in a relationship. And that's it. It is a problem of the distribution of love, respect, and caring. And when you don't get what you need and deserve, you stay in it. So with that simplistic definition, then I was able to explain that there are many personality types that make it codependent. Just like the narcissist that we'll talk about later. You can have narcissistic personality disorder, but there are many types of personality. And then I came up with the 5 categories. And so that is what I introduced to the world, is a very clean definition that applies to every codependent. And then there was a time where I just told myself, I got to get rid of this name codependent. It is stigmatizing, it's derogatory, it makes people feel bad. It doesn't even make sense. And then one day, it hit me. I almost fell off my chair. The problem with all codependents is they lack self-love. They have a deficiency in self-love. And because of that, and their loneliness and their shame, they find themselves habitually, flexibly in relationship with narcissists. So that's where I came up with the new term, self-love deficit disorder, SLDD, and SLD, or self-love deficient, as a person. And it basically names the problem. And when I created that, I wasn't sure how the public would respond. And almost universally, from anyone who considered them a codependent, they were so pleased and happy with the term because it felt accurate. It felt real. And then from that point, I started to perfect my treatment program, which took the problem of self-love deficiency and understood it as, if that's the problem, then the solution is the opposite, is to find out why the person is self-love deficient, solve that through treatment so that they can become self-love abundant, and therefore no longer have the problem, which is what now I call the codependency cure. That's probably the quickest I've ever explained what is codependent, how I came up with SLDD, and the beginning of the codependency cure.
And the way that makes sense to me is that codependent, self-love deficient people are more other focused and narcissists are self-focused. So that attraction, because it's something that they don't have within themselves and it's something they need to find, but they don't have to hook up with a narcissist to do that.
Right, and it's in my book, I created the relationship compatibility theory and continuum. And basically, it supports the hypothesis that narcissists always fall in love with codependents, or SLDs, and SLDs always fall in love with narcissists, and explains the human magnet syndrome of the attraction of opposites and how well they fit together like a dance couple. On this continuum, I wanted to demonstrate that people have two relationship orientations. And a relationship orientation is defined as, it's really the distribution of love, respect, and care in a relationship. You either are on one side of the continuum where you are others focused, and that by itself is not necessarily dysfunctional.
Right, right.
And on the other side of the continuum, you are self-focused. And again, by itself, it's not dysfunctional. It's not codependent side of the continuum and narcissistic side. And the more others focused you are, the less you take care of yourself. And at the very extreme of the continuum is codependency, where you're completely others focused. And the very end of the other side is pathological narcissism. And the continuum explains that people who are human magnet syndrome compelled in a relationship, which are most relationships that start with chemistry, there has to be a matching of opposites. An extreme others focus, an SLD, will always be attracted to an extreme self-focus, a narcissist. And it kind of gives a numerical, almost mathematical explanation for it.
So one of the things that you talk about with codependency is it often begins with attachment trauma and parental disappointment. Could you say a little bit more about that?
So one of my discoveries along the way is it's incredibly important to not only re-explain codependency, rename it, but to help people understand why it has been resistant to treatment. Up until I started figuring stuff out in my own therapy, I started to realize that very few people ever broke the habit. Codependency treatment or therapy never resulted with them stopping their relationship pattern with narcissists. What I did was I created a simplistic understanding of what exactly is SLDD or codependency. And I created this pyramid. It's as follows: SLDD, codependency. And from this point on, I'm just going to say SLDD. It comes from attachment trauma. And every SLD I know has a childhood which is marred by an attachment experience with one parent who's a pathological narcissist. And more often than not, because of the human magnet syndrome, another parent who's a codependent. During our critical phase of emotional development, being raised by a narcissist is highly emotionally traumatic. And that trauma creates the distorted thinking, the distorted value system, the distorted boundaries that are going to manifest in a relationship template that are going to drive the human magnet syndrome into adulthood. From attachment trauma comes core shame, which is a feeling of being fundamentally broken or not good enough. The human doing versus the human being. From the core shame comes a condition called pathological loneliness, where you feel so alone, bone achingly in pain when you're not in a relationship. From the pathological loneliness comes this addiction. It's this compulsion to find a way out of the pain. Every addiction, whether it's drugs, sex, gambling, begins with someone who's trying to get rid of some pain, and they find something that gives them euphoria. The SLDD addiction is the requirement to be in a relationship to take away the pain of loneliness. And of course, the human magnet syndrome says people fall in love with their compatible opposite. The SLD always falls in love with the narcissist. From the addiction comes at the very top of the pyramid is SLDD, which is, compulsive caretaking, sacrifice, being invisible, marginalized. There's so many different forms of SLDD. And the point of that is that most people in psychotherapy are working with the top of the pyramid. They're working with the symptoms. And that is what I call Band-Aid therapy. It feels good, it feels necessary, but the Band-Aid falls off and the deeper wound manifests again. So if you see the pyramid of attachment trauma, core shame, pathological loneliness, SLDD addiction, and of course SLDD, then it is incumbent upon the treatment provider to make their treatment based upon the central problem. And that is where I created what I call my self-love recovery treatment program that can heal the primary wounds to permanently change the self-love deficit disorder into what I call the cure self-love abundance. Anyone who's interested in this whole pyramid explanation, go to my YouTube channel. Just go youtube.com/Ross Rosenberg and put in the search bar Rosenberg Pyramid. And it's the only video I have that is an animation. And that will explain not only the pyramid with the problem, it explains the solution.
I really like your conviction that those who suffer with this problem need to take responsibility and recognize they're both a victim and at fault. I particularly liked your Naomi Judd quote, "You only get to be a victim once. After that, you're a volunteer." Could you explain this in greater depth?
To solve the problem, we have to take responsibility for our part in it. And it's only through acknowledging our part in it can we actually make progress in therapy. You can't make progress if you play the victim and you keep thinking that the next time you'll know what to do. So I never blame the codependent for being hurt or abused, but I do hold them responsible, because you can't change yourself if you can't understand what you did wrong. And there's so many people on YouTube and there's books out there that talk about nasty narcissists, how to solve the problem. You have to solve the problem in yourself, because the narcissist won't go away. You have to break your attraction to them, but you have to be able to break away from them. So taking responsibility leads to successful long-term treatment outcomes.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Could you share your dance metaphor with my audience about the narcissist and the codependent and how they go together so well?
I came up with this idea of a dance couple. For two people who love to dance, they have to pay attention and follow their respective role. There's a follower and there's a leader. And if you stay connected to your role and you love to dance, the dance will work. It will be perfectly coordinated. You won't step on each other's toes. The leader moves you through the dance floor, gets most of the recognition. The follower effortlessly, instinctively, and intuitively can almost predict what the leader needs, and they look like they're perfectly aligned. Well, that is a metaphor for the codependent narcissist relationship. The SLD, the codependent who's invisible, self-love deficient, lonely, afraid that no one will love her or him, doesn't really have well-formed opinions. They instinctively feel comfortable with the person who needs to be the center of the universe, the narcissist, the controller. It's all they know. It is as if their childhood, because remember, SLDD comes from attachment trauma. So their childhood trauma burned in their familiarity and comfort with being the SLD, because that's all they know about love. So when an SLD meets a narcissist through the human magnet syndrome, chemistry, they fall in love because it feels so perfect. The narcissist will talk all day about herself or himself, will be the center of attention, will be the charismatic, sexy, charming, strong, edgy person. And SLD will feel so comfortable in listening, understanding their pain. And so that is the follower of the dance, perfectly aligning with the leader of the dance, and both feel happy together.
So what keeps the SLD dancing when they really want to stop? They've had enough and they just hang in there. What keeps that going?
I've been in the mental health career field for 32 years. And of those 32 years, I've been an addictions counselor. And sometimes I joke and saying it goes back 42 years because I had substance abuse problems when I was a teenager. But a part of my pyramid is SLDD addiction. This is an addiction in every way, in every manner. It fits perfectly with what we understand addictions. It is this compulsion to be in a situation that makes you feel really good, that helps you escape pain. The euphoria is temporary, and you can leave your misery just for a little while. It's short lasting, and then you're stuck with the consequences. And given a situation where you have to say, I can't do this anymore, then the withdrawals set in. And those painful withdrawals, they distort our thinking and make us want or justify or rationalize why we should use our drug. And that's the same with SLDs. They are addicted to a relationship. The relationships that they're going to have are narcissists, because that's how the human magnet syndrome works. The relationship keeps them from feeling their pathological loneliness and their core shame. And if they should stop the relationship, they will have withdrawals. And the number one withdrawal symptom that is more painful than the physical withdrawals of alcohol, cocaine, or heroin, many people will say, who are both SLDs and recovering addicts of other chemicals, is the pathological loneliness. That pain is so deep and burning that it will either keep the SLD in a relationship, it will make them return to a relationship, or it will compel them to find the next drug person who inevitably, because of the dance and the human, is a narcissist. That is why the third stage of my 10-stage treatment method is solving the addiction. And it's very early in the program, because if you can't get past the addiction, how can you get past the other elements that will get you to breaking free from SLDD and finding self-love abundance?
Yeah, that really does make an enormous amount of sense. Would you share the observe, don't absorb technique that can help those that suffer with SLD?
I was in a relationship with a person who had borderline personality disorder. And I started to realize that her power was exponentiated when she could get a reaction out of me. And like any person with borderline personality disorder, they would go from loving to hate, to loving to hurting. And if I got mad and fought back, it only made things worse. So something clicked inside of me. Is I figured the only way for me to survive this is I have to find a way to turn off my emotions. And within that cauldron of pain and suffering, I came up with this idea that would become the observe, don't absorb technique, is to, in a healthy way, to disassociate affectively, or to remove my emotions or feelings, to watch the person try to hurt me and not allow the feelings to be internalized, to sink in, or to be absorbed. So to observe a narcissist, to avoid being pulled into the narcissist, what I call wrestling ring.
Yeah.
I started to conceptualize that the narcissist's power was getting a reaction, hurting you, the narcissistic injury, or getting you to fight them, because if you would fight them, they're skilled in beating you up. So to avoid that, you had to figure a way to stay away from the fight. And that is not get triggered, not get activated. Because once an SLD gets angry, they want to fight back. And the fight always means they lose, and there's consequences, and they can't escape. So the observe, not absorb technique teaches someone to, in a healthy way, disassociate emotionally, to watch the narcissist being a narcissist, watch the narcissist try to trigger you. You shut down your capacity to internalize or be triggered. And if you can do that, the narcissist loses control. You don't get hurt. You are strong, and the dynamics change. So observe, don't absorb became this phenomenon. It became a powerful tool to break free from narcissists.
You offer important insights on setting boundaries in hostile environments. One of the things I really liked was your suggestion that people don't explain, that explaining is just getting you into more and more trouble and helping you be exhausted. I think boundaries are incredibly important. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
I have this video. It's called Boundaries with Narcissists Don't Work. And so let me start the answer by saying boundaries with narcissists will not work if your expectation is for them to work. Narcissists will never willingly and openly accept a boundary unless there's a consequence. So if you understand that setting boundaries with a pathological narcissist do not work in traditional ways where someone says yes, okay, and relationship builds through strength and connection, then you have accurate expectations. Boundaries work with narcissists when you set the boundary, you have reasonable expectations for them not understanding it, for them reacting, and then you follow through on the consequence. So once you understand that boundaries cannot work with someone who is so self-centered, narcissistic, self-righteous, and entitled, and that the only time it seems to work is if they're trying to manipulate you, or you are getting so healthy or strong, they're afraid and they'll give you something temporarily, then you understand that the best you can do is keep yourself safe as you execute the boundaries and execute the consequence. Because SLDs don't have experience with setting boundaries, executing the consequence, and seeing relationships formed or broken up because of the boundaries. And with narcissists, people will, and this is what I call my Surgeon General warning. I'm neither a surgeon nor a general, despite being a sergeant in the Army. But my Surgeon General warning is like on a pack of cigarettes. It says, if you start setting boundaries with narcissists, you will lose between 75 and 85% of your people you loved, who you thought you loved, and people who you thought loved you. Because everything shifts. So boundaries are essential to solving self-love deficit disorder, but the expectation must be that you're not going to get the pathological narcissist to change and to understand. And through this stage treatment program I have, one stage at a time, get yourself free from all the people that cannot and will not accept your boundaries to people that can and share with you both what they need and what they'll give.
Okay. What else can people do to achieve self-love that you'd like to end with?
What they need is to let me talk for 6 more hours so I can answer the question. What they need is to understand that the only way to solve this is to understand that at a very young age, you were terribly hurt. And so hurt that you might not even remember. And it set you up with this relationship template to unconsciously, instinctively, and repeatedly and paradoxically feel comfortable with narcissists who eventually hurt you. And once you recognize this comes from deep forces that you might not even know, is to seek treatment or therapy from therapists who understand that. My book has sold over 100,000 copies. It's in 9 languages. I got the whole YouTube phenomena. The information is out there. Oh, then I have these seminars that are available to therapists and the general public. Therapists know about my work. And if you have a therapist who you like, who is open to this, suggest my work. The book is not that expensive. The videos are not that expensive. Find a therapist that understands that SLDD is a symptom of a deeper problem and talk therapy doesn't work. Get involved in the type of treatment that can get to the bottom of this and move forward. And then when you heal and solve the problem at its foundation, you'll experience self-love. And I promise you, and this is stage 8 of my 10 stage, once you experience self-love abundance, everything changes. You don't need anyone to take your pain away. You're not lonely. You love yourself so much that life is good just by being yourself. When you quit chasing the person who's going to take your pain away, solve the pain, and you're happy, that is when everything changes. So open up courageously your mind and your heart to the truth of your problem. Find a therapist that can help you get to the bottom of it and heal. and believe that your birthright of being happy, loved, respected can come.
It's totally possible. I'm going to share the George Eliot quote that was in your book.
I love that quote.
It is so beautiful. It is never too late to be what you might have been. Thank you so much for joining me on What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, the podcast that helps couples make it. You can find more at therapyideas.net, which is my website, or Ross's website, which is selfloverecovery.com. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.